Hello, Fanatics. I'm using not only the WarPaints Fanatic, excuse me, paints for the first time, but I'm also using the Wargamers Edition wet palette for the first time. So I'm not sponsored by Army Painter. I'd like to be, because I love their products. All right, now what I heard is that in this speed paint container, you can just take your finger and take out the paint that was already in there, and that it's kind of fun and pretty cool. So that was a mixture of black with, or it's a mixture of white with ultra varnish. And then here I have dark wood with ultra varnish. Comes out nice. These didn't come out. I was trying these ahead of time, and where I mixed up these paints didn't come out. I'm not sure why the ones with varnish did and those didn't. So there's another one. It's a mixture of Gravelord Gray speed paint and then Grim Black speed paint. Comes out nice even though it was mixed with varnish, which acts like a primer for the plastic. I've labeled a couple more wells, one with matte medium and one with ultra medium. What I really mean is matte varnish and ultra varnish. So I'm going to shake this matte medium. It doesn't appear to have a ball in it. Oh, there it is. Shake it 50 times, 31. They threw in a ball or two, but it's not that conducive to shaking with the ball because it's so thick, but that's good. You get more for your money, right? Okay, and then I'm also going to put ultra matte, which is way more liquid. So I have to remember to use more of this and less of the matte stuff from WarPaints Fanatic. I didn't really count, but I've used this pretty recently, so I'll call it good. Put a drop of each. Because it's so viscous, the drop of matte varnish is much larger. I see I got a couple of hairs in there. Let me see if I can get rid of those. Probably from my dog. Good not to have those. I also got some brushes from Army Painter, so I am going to use, that's not an Army Painter one. That's not an Army Painter one. One was a dry brush. Oh, okay. So, and that's more of a brush I'll use for bases because of the shape of it. So it's narrowed down to these two. So I think I'm going to go with this brush right here. Army Painter brush. It's got a nice little protective cap. I'll put that up there. And definitely important to get it wet first before you start. Put a little water in there. But I'm just going to get half of it wet. I'm not going to get the whole thing wet so that it's less likely to wick it up into the ferrule. And then I'm going to put in one of these. I didn't label it. And there's more hair in there. This True Blood stuff. It's an effect paint from Fanatics. Okay, there's 50 shakes. I'll put a drop of it here. I should label this. Very viscous, just like blood. And I'm going to stick my brush down in there, and then I'm gonna put it on the wet palette. Thin it up. Get a little more. Probably don't want to use the wet palette too much. I probably want to leave it pretty thick. Because blood is thick, right? And then what I want to paint with it is this vampire's coffin, and I want to paint where the blood is up in here. It's already been painted somewhat, but I want to paint it more. Certainly looks bloody now while it's wet. We'll see how it looks when it's dry, right? Get a little more. And then here where the blood is flowing down into the coffin. I'm gonna move my light so you can see that better. Yeah, I think you can see it pretty well now. So I didn't paint down here, but I'll probably eventually paint down here. This looks like blood, but in the pictures that GW has produced, it didn't seem to be as bloody down there as it was up at the top. Now, I've kind of messed up my brush already because it's such a rough texture, and I was probably not careful to go in one direction. So sorry, Army Painter, I already messed up the new brush that you got, so I'm going to go try to fix it. I'm going to go wash it in the bathroom with soap, and I'm going to clean it also with isopropyl alcohol and see if I can get the point back. So yeah, that definitely looks more bloody than did the way I had it. So I'll probably get down here and maybe use some of their retarder or whatever to keep the paint wet and have it flow down into those crevices, and I think that'll actually look pretty cool too. But definitely better than it was already. Good job, Army Painter. I like your blood, your True Blood paint. So there it is, True Blood. I'll be right back. Thanks for your patience. That's pretty pointy now. And I'm remembering that it wasn't that pointy when it was brand new, so it's probably better now. I used a little saliva on it too, but I didn't put it in my mouth, paint in my mouth. I don't ever think that's a good idea. What I did is I put some on my fingers and then put it on the tip to make it more pointy. All right, So I'm going to get the first NightHaunt. We'll come back to that coffin later. I'll make another video when I do more with it. I'm eager to see how it, when it totally dries, how it looks. So I've got this Glaive Wraith Stalker, and I'm gonna start out with black. I'm going to do the WarPaints Fanatics first, and then I'm gonna do some Viejo game color at the end. The one here that's got the flames, I'm going to try to paint the flames with that yellow and red that I have. We'll see if there's enough battery in the iPad in order to film all that. And then I'll do this one with the alternate colors. So for this guy, I'm going to use matte black. I'm going to use ash gray, black for the evilness coming up from the ground and the end of the cloth, ash gray for the weapon, Dryad brown for the wood part of the weapon, and dark rust effect paint for, I want to have a layer of rust at where it's sharp, so that you know if you get hit by this guy, you're getting a tetanus shot, right? Okay, so I got a nice clean brush. Yeah, that shakes much easier. 1, 2, 3. Put 1 drop on the wet palette. Maybe 1 in a part. Whoops, how did I get myself so messed up already? Okay, I'm gonna go wash my hands. Stuff's probably thicker than what I'm used to working with. I've never had good results on a paint job when I had paint on my hands. Makes sense, right? Okay, I'm gonna put some water down on the wet palette. Get a little water on the brush, and I'm gonna start spreading this out to where I want it to be. And then I should have done this first. I'm gonna take a little bit of their matte stuff to make sure that matte varnish to make sure that it covers the plastic, because look at where it came together with the water. It's not even diluting. See, the paint is still just as black, you know. It's not even breaking down. That's how good this paint is. All right, so I'm going to start by painting this. I'm holding my hands together so that I'm steady. And I'm putting it on the evilness that's coming up from the ground. And if I can't see any of the turquoise colored plastic through this, I'm going to wish I had diluted it more. And that looks like a chain or something, so I'm going to avoid painting that for now. Oh yeah, that looks pretty transparent. Nice paint. Good job, Army Painter. I'll put some in the black. Get some on my brush. I want it to look black, but I want it to be transparent enough to let the turquoise colored plastic shine through a bit. So I'm going wherever the paint didn't cover with it. Look at how nice that works. Good job, Army Painter. I'm really liking your Fanatic's paint already. It's very thin, but covers it very, very well. You can get down into those crevices. Which is what I want it to do because it's so thin. And it's staying on there because it's so matte. Staying on the plastic. It's not a problem that I get the black paint on the high points because I'm going to cover this with iridescent paint, and those points are actually look the most iridescent and reflect light the most. So it's kind of the opposite of normal painting, opposite of normal highlighting. And we'll find out if this grand experiment is good real soon. I'm going to use the painting paddle that I created in my varnish video to paint all these NightHaunts at once. All right, let's get some real thin paint. Get off the excess. Just anywhere where there's pure blue turquoise colored plastic shining through. And I'm also letting this flow into the low points on this gargoyle that I added to the base. And I'll go over the highlights on the gargoyle with gray, which is going to be my next color. See if I can get a little thicker and a little more matte. Should have done the matte first. A little thicker paint to see if I can cover this. It's a little piece of sprue that's supporting that demon skull. I think I'll put a little bit more paint down. A little more matte varnish to act like a primer. thinning this so much that you really got to kind of build it up in layers. Oh, that covered nicely. And I'm okay that it doesn't follow its claim of covering in one coat because I'm diluting it so much and I'm adding medium to it. It's really a very low percentage of paint. And I'm wanting to build it up layer after layer. Okay, I'm beating up my brush again, so I'm going to go wash it. I don't think it's a bad brush. I think it's just kind of going beyond its intended use. Wasn't supposed to be used by such a klutz. But I'll go wash it when I change colors. And anything that didn't cover good, it doesn't hurt to do a little gray in there. The black will have the most spectacular iridescent effect. The white will be pearlescent, and the gray will be kind of in between, if it turns out the way I predict. But I'm not going to say I'm unhappy with it already, before even I iridescent paint it. He just looks like he's got a lot of evilness hanging down around his head. And I've liked on a channel where a guy painted his NightHaunt black and red, and I think I'm going to do something like that when I start painting the gray plastic ones. Probably zenithal prime them, triple prime them, and then paint them more of a black and red pattern. And then decide if I'm going to still do the iridescent paint or not. I'll be right back. I'm going to wash my brush and then I'm going to start with gray. So it doesn't look too bad. It looks like it's forming a point without even using the isopropyl alcohol 91% to clean the ferrule because it doesn't look like it has any paint in the ferrule. All right, I'm going to use ash gray next. .37, 38, 39, 40. Okay, I'm going to add a little more water to the wet palette. One mistake I always make is this is supposed to be a wet palette, and it's, for me, it's more of a damp palette. Yeah, it's definitely too dry. All right, so I'm going to remember to dip it in their matte varnish first. Doesn't matter if there's a little black paint in it. Just mix with the gray. Good, I didn't get any paint on my fingers that time. That's good. And a drop of water next to it. Dilute that varnish a little bit. That's nice. Nice and thin. It looks like contrast paint. Okay, and then we're going to see how well it covers the weapon. That's not been varnished good enough. That's pretty darn good. I kind of painted over where the brown will be, but that's okay. The more paint I start getting down on this thing, the better. Okay, definitely come back with more layers, but that's not bad. Okay, and then I'm going to paint this thing gray, whatever this is. And then I'm going to go over, well, the gargoyle's not quite dry yet. There's still some wetness on him, so I'm going to wait till he dries more before I go over him. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then I'm going to go over another coat of gray. Make sure I don't have any paint on my hands. Get some more matte varnish. More water. Nice paint, army painter. I'm liking these Fanatics. All right, I think I started with this side. Yeah, I'll just do where it's dry. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. Covers the top of the weapon very nicely. And I'm not going to worry as much about the bottom of the weapon because I'm going to be putting rust effect on that anyways. I'll put a little bit of this lighter gray on these horns. And these places where I painted black and gray a lot of times, I will go over it with my color of the base. I use Death Road Forest, Citadel paint for my bases, or something that I've mixed up that's equivalent in color. I'm not saying I mind the little bit of blue showing through, so I think I might actually be done with that and switch to brown. So I'm going to clean my brush. Still looks like it's got a pretty good point. And I'm going to switch to Dryad brown. $33, $34. More than I need. Oops, don't forget about the matte. Add a little black in it, it's not going to hurt, it'll just make it a little darker brown. And some water. Look at that, how you can thin it and it doesn't break down. So beautiful paint. Nice job, Army Painter. Okay. The handle, there's more of the handle showing on this side. And I'm liking the color. It is more shiny than the Ultra Matte, but not bad. Probably like the Ultra Matte a little better. AK Interactive Ultra Matte. Varnish a little better. But this is not bad. Primer, the clear primer was very shiny, so it's kind of part of it. Now there's a part I forgot, and I don't care that it's brown. I'm just going to go in there and do it brown. I just mainly want some paint everywhere so that the iridescent can do its thing. I can go back over it with, now that I have some paint sticking, it'll make it easier to go back over it in the color I want to. I could even go back over it with green if I wanted. Probably definitely go back with gray. Look at what's happening to my brush all the time. I think I'm going to try cleaning it with alcohol and see how good it gets. So here's what I use. Good stuff. So I got the point back after cleaning it with soap, water, and alcohol, hot water. We'll see if it stays though. Okay, I'm going to go back to the gray a little bit, a little more ultra matte, or a little bit more matte rather. Go back to the gray. Nice. I'm also going to do some highlights on the gargoyle. Go over some of the places that I did brown that I don't really want to be brown. Just let that dry horizontal. And I'll start shaking my rust. And I'm going to put this on the dry palette part because I imagine this has some thickness associated with it that it gives it kind of texture for it being rust. I'm also not going to dilute it. I'm just going to go along the edge of the weapon. Oh, that works nicely. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. just along where it was sharpened. Because just that roughed up steel made it rust. So very subtle effect. And that's what I got. Go ahead and put a little rust, doesn't matter, over this. Just to start getting more paint built up over it. Because I'm going to go over it with Death Row Forest anyways. Just a piece of sprue that I mounted that demon skull on. And that's the finished product. And I think I'm probably going to take a break because I'm tired enough after doing one to where I'll do less of a good job if I keep going. So I'm going to stop at this point. So tell me what you think. Tell me especially what you think of the WarPaints Fanatics paints that I'm using. I used black that's in the black and grays triad, and then the gray was down on that same triad. The third lightest color, so I used those in the same triad. And then ruddy brown, this was the third darkest brown that I used here. Effect paints, of course, are not going to be in a triad. So certainly these paints are meant for highlighting, and that's not what I'm doing here. I'm painting by numbers, and then I'm going to give it an iridescent coat. So tell me what you think of that. Thank you, painters.